Hey guys, so my friend Willa wanted me to look into the Courtney Tailor case, and I'm going to present what I found and kind of let you come to your own conclusions. Hopefully they will actually give us more when this investigation gets complete, but generally speaking they don't. Unfortunately, media reports when the shock and awe of a murder happens, but then they don't really care to let people know what ended up happening with it. It's just all about the headlines, what gets people's attention for a second. Right now, as far as the Courtney Tailor case goes, there's a lot of talking, but not a lot of actually saying much. Here's what we know. Police responded to a 911 call about a domestic violence incident involving a stabbing around 5 p.m. on Saturday, April 3rd. It's been reported that 25-year-old Instagram model and OnlyFans model Courtney Tailor is the one that made that phone call. I smiled because now we have OnlyFans models, and I think that's comical. Sorry. When police arrived, they found 27-year-old Christian Obumseli with an apparent knife wound to the chest. First responders rushed him to Jason Memorial Hospital, where he was pronounced dead. It's been accepted that Courtney Tailor is the one that stabbed him to death in their luxury apartment in Miami, Florida. She's been seen on video covered in blood in the same outfit that she was wearing earlier in an Instagram video. The video's like 20-30 minutes long. I'm not going to put all of that in here. She talked about all kinds of normal stuff that I would expect somebody that is shooting for the audience that she's shooting for to be talking about. She did specifically reference something she was planning on doing that night, so I'm going to include that clip here.
I would love that. Am I going to go to broadcast live on OFC? Yes, I'm going to do it tonight. That's what I'm saying. I need to get some, dirty questions to answer tonight, but I'm going to do something else. TV guy, Rick. Man, I gotta go on your profile. I don't know what name it is. Okay. Where do I see myself in 5 years? That's a good question. Okay. I see myself with say 2 children. I'd say at least 1 kid. In 5 years, I want 1 kid. Should I have a daughter or a son? I want a kid.
She doesn't come off to me like somebody who's planning to murder somebody in a few hours in this video. Does that mean anything? Not really. I mean, it could suggest that it's not premeditated, or it could suggest she's a really great psychopath who's really good at doing things like that without caring. Police say that they were both involved in a physical altercation before the stabbing happened. She told authorities she was acting in self-defense because she thought he was going to hurt her, and that is a very gray area. Now, if he had done things in the past to suggest that there was a good chance that he was going to hurt her in a life-threatening type of way, like I have had stalkers before. If a stalker happens to show up in my house where they're clearly not supposed to be and they've made threats in the past and stuff, they don't have to assault me for me to defend myself, because things have been established that they want to hurt me. And so if they're in that situation, they're only in that situation to harm me. There's no question of that in my mind. Doesn't sound like they had that kind of relationship, but it does sound like there was build. Like it was building towards something. Another thing that would play into that would be if she has a history of abuse, like if she's been victimized before. Somebody who is a survivor, a previous victim, is more likely to jump that gun than somebody else who isn't, because somebody else who isn't is going to have in their mind, that couldn't happen to me, but when it does happen to you, it very much changes your perspective. You know that it can happen to you. So the next time, you're not going to give anywhere near as much space for something to happen as you would have before. So that plays in there too. Local media outlets reported that she claimed she stabbed him after he attacked her, pushing her to the floor and grabbing her neck. We know that there was a physical altercation between them before he was stabbed, a Miami PD spokesperson said. Whether or not there was marking on her would probably be an indicator, but not all of the time is there marking. On the other hand, I can scratch an itch on my neck and it can look like somebody assaulted me because I mark very easily. Some people don't. Some people don't mark at all. Sometimes somebody can be choked and there will be no visible evidence. They can be choked almost to death with no visible evidence, and then they can die later because there was still damage that was done internally, even if you can't see it externally. I can put this video up. We did more talking more in depth about strangling there. That is extremely significant, and it is a huge indicator of future homicide by that person to that victim if they don't die in that moment. So if he was choking her, that is definitely enough force to be considered something that you need to do self-defense to the point of killing somebody for. Some people, including Christian's family, are in an uproar because Clemley was not immediately charged with murder. We're going to talk about that more here in a minute. We were told that Courtney was taken to the police station for questioning, and while she was there, she said that she was suicidal. As a result, she was taken to a hospital to undergo some kind of a mental health evaluation. Under the Baker Act, such hospitalizations are confidential, so they're not going to release anything else surrounding that. Obviously, they decided that she wasn't suicidal, like, longer term, which happens. I mean, you can be suicidal in a moment and a few hours later have gotten through that moment and be okay. But she wasn't held long term because she was seen and harassed a few days later, and we'll get to that too. I wish that I knew more history, so if there are things that you know in a personal relationship with either of these two that could be helpful, history is so important in figuring out these homicides, especially in a situation like this where it's very murky, very gray, could be either way. Their history is going to matter a lot for that. We know that Christian is a Texas native and Courtney is a Michigan native. They've been dating for less than 2 years. Christian recently moved to Florida with Taylor, reportedly to work in cryptocurrency while she was working on pursuing her internet modeling career. Apparently, in addition to Instagram, where she has more than 2 million followers, and OnlyFans, Courtney was featured in G-Eazy's 2015 video, Me, Myself, and I. Gonna attempt to post some of that here. We'll see if I get copyrighted. I'm not gonna do the music. Miami-based WPLG10 reported earlier this month that friends of the couple described a very rocky relationship between the two of them, although sources apparently gave conflicting stories about who was the aggressor. The couple broke up last month, according to the Miami Herald, and Christian allegedly began sleeping in common areas in the building, so he wasn't even sleeping in the apartment anymore. Now, if we look at this in terms of normal intimate partner homicide, the most dangerous time for somebody to be attacked is after a breakup. That would generally, for this situation, say that she was in more danger. She broke up with him. She's putting space. He doesn't feel like he has anywhere to go. He feels like he's lost everything. I mean, obviously he has family who cares about him, but he didn't choose to go back to Texas when they broke up. He didn't choose to go to that family, so that says that he puts a lot on her and this relationship, which is understandable. If you're with somebody for a couple of years, you're going to do that, but that also would, in normal pattern of the way that things go, put her in more danger. Now, if he broke up with her and she was the one that was pushed out, it would put him in more danger. But that's not how this worked. Friends say that they had a really rocky relationship, but they had conflicting stories about who was the aggressor. You know, we deal on this channel with people that are very clearly the aggressor for the most part, and then somebody is pretty clearly the victim for the most part, especially in the cases of their murder. But there are just more toxic relationships where both people are bad for each other. Both are aggressive because they bring that out of each other. Both are emotionally abusive, and they wouldn't necessarily be with other people, but that is a bad relationship. And I don't know if that's what this was, but where there are conflicting stories about who is the aggressor, it's possible. So we're going to throw that out there too. Intense arguments were common between the two of them. Mutual friends told an ABC affiliate, "We've seen her hit him. I've never seen him hit her," is what Ashley Vaughn said. However, law enforcement sources say that on April 1st, Miami police were dispatched to their apartment on a domestic call. Police supposedly found bruises on her arms and her legs, but for some reason reason nobody was arrested. So I looked up the Florida laws for that, because where I live, if there was any kind of an altercation like that, and especially if bruising was found, that person would have been arrested. No questions asked, even if she didn't want him to be arrested. So I don't know if that was preferential treatment for either of them because of who they are, or I don't know. But in the 2021 Florida statutes, Title XLV11, Chapter 901.15, it says a law enforcement officer may arrest a person without a warrant when there is probable cause to believe that a person has committed any battery upon another person. According to this law enforcement source, that definitely happened. Why was there not an arrest? I don't know. Like I said, it points to a building storm. If she broke up with him a month ago, he's been sleeping in commons areas, according to her attorney.
But he did make his way back up to the apartment on several occasions during that week.
Without permission.
He was not welcome to stay. He was not on the lease.
And then he's there. There's an altercation. She gets bruised up 2 days before, and then he's back again. That might be cause enough for her to assume that she needs to defend herself. Also, if he put his hands on her neck, he's definitely a bigger person than she is, size-wise. It's possible. Stabbing somebody, period, is a significant deal. And if you're doing it in self-defense, you definitely would need to be really afraid. Really, really afraid. Or you're committing a murder. And then you still have to have something. Because stabbing is hard. Shooting somebody can be much more impersonal. You don't have to touch them. You don't have to even be close to them. Stabbing somebody is extremely personal, in your face. You feel everything, and it takes a lot of physical force, a lot of physical exertion to be able to do that. Frank Perito, her attorney, has maintained that his client is a domestic violence survivor and she had no choice but to defend herself during the altercation. Courtney was not arrested because it's clear that she was defending herself and was the victim of domestic violence, he told Fox News Digital. As a former prosecutor for the Miami State's Attorney's Office, the fact that she has not been arrested or charged is indicative that the investigation has concluded she acted in self-defense, which makes sense, especially considering she has money and influence and therefore would be a flight risk if she actually was considered a murderer. Her lawyer maintained at the time of the incident, Mr. Obumseli was committing a forcible felony. He also said Courtney acted in self-defense. The investigation by both the City of Miami Police Department and the Miami State Attorney's Office will conclude such. With that said, we would ask for the public's understanding about observing the family's privacy at this time. The attorney for Christian's family is disputing claims of self-defense. We believe that her statements are self-serving in an effort to avoid any accountability for using deadly force when no deadly force had been used against her. Although the family is still mourning the untimely death of Mr. Obumseli, we believe that once a full investigation is done, Ms. Clanley will be held to account for taking the life of Mr. Obumseli. Jeffrey, Christian's older brother, took issue with the lack of transparency in an Instagram post and alleged that it strongly suggests that foul play is involved. Courtney still has yet to explain exactly what happened leading to Toby's murder. We have every reason to believe that his death is the result of unwarranted and unprovoked violence. We want to see that justice is served. So these two are kind of warring, understandably so. When domestic violence is a thing, if it is a thing in this relationship, a lot of times it's not known. There are definitely people that I have reported on who were murdered by intimate partners who were controlling and manipulative and emotionally abusive, who nobody knew anything was going on, and police had not been called to their home for any kind of domestic assaults before that. Or they had domestic assaults, but police still hadn't been involved. Either of those is true. So unfortunately, neither of those things being lacking suggests anything here. And actually, there had been an incident recently where police were involved and bruising and such was found. So physical evidence of assault was found. And like I said, there's a lot of talk going on without saying a whole lot. This is a good example of this. Instagram model Courtney Tailor spotted on date with white guy. And it's funny because an interview that was done, I think recently with Courtney Tailor, She talked about how she only dates black guys. So that's funny in and of itself. It shows like a complete lack of any research whatsoever about the person that you're doing, and it's 100% clickbait, because as it turns out, the date with the white guy that she was on was her father. She had gone out to have a drink with her father, and people were reporting that she was spotted in a bar with a guy, and this lady threw this big fit.
Do you mind not typing, sir? Yeah, what? I'll videotape her. Right now, you should go. Yeah, you should go. Because you just killed her boyfriend. Yeah, you did. Yeah, and okay, cool.
It doesn't look like it's like your poppin' kind of dance club bar thing, which is kind of what they make it sound like in the media. She was having a drink with her dad. To be fair, if it was me in her shoes, I would probably do that within the confines of my home, or their home. Probably, actually, because I probably wouldn't want to be in my home. I don't know where this was located, but she has a right to deal. And I don't think that being seen with her dad is proof of any kind of crazy wrongdoing. This lady posted on Instagram this video and said, on a Friday night, Courtney Tailor thought she could casually sit at the bar with her father after she brutally murdered her boyfriend on Sunday. Does this look like a mentally unstable person to you, as she claims? I wouldn't say that she's mentally unstable. She was assessed for mental health because she was feeling suicidal. That does not say that you're mentally unstable. That can say that you just were in a extremely traumatic incident and you were reeling. And if you have never experienced an extremely traumatic incident, then you don't know what I'm talking about. But I just did that recently, and I had those same type of feelings and contacted somebody, and the next day I was a lot better. I just needed to sleep on it. But in that moment, when you're dealing with the trauma of stuff that had just happened, whether he attacked her or she just was afraid that he was going to attack her, or whatever the case may be, she stabbed somebody to death. She stabbed somebody that she had undoubtedly said that she loved and that she had been close to and that she was sharing a life with. This person is now gone at her hands. It's 100% understandable why you would feel suicidal after that. Her attorney was like, it's unfortunate that a member of the public, knowing absolutely nothing about the circumstances and events surrounding the death of Mr. Obumseli, would take the opportunity to harass the Clinley family during a time that they're trying to be supportive for Courtney.
What somebody says automatically becomes a fact. We need to get back to understanding, wait for the facts to come out. We cannot rush to judgment.
Mr. Parita went on to allege that his client was a victim of physical, emotional, and mental abuse at the hands of Mr. Obumseli. The lawyer also claimed that Tailor may have been a victim of human trafficking, but did not give further context. Jeffrey took to Instagram also and wrote, "It's been a week since my brother was brutally and senselessly killed. Courtney Tailor's callous actions have not been met with an ounce of remorse. We've seen videos of Courtney kissing her dogs while covered in what we believe to be my brother's blood and casually getting drinks at a hotel bar days later while my brother lays in a morgue." As far as the kissing her dogs thing, that could also be a way of self-soothing after a traumatic incident. That doesn't suggest anything dicey either, as much as Jeffrey might want to believe that. Comfort animals. In a situation like that, that was the only comfort that she was able to get. It doesn't suggest anything. Jeffrey, in his post, insisted that Tailor is getting preferential treatment. The bottom line is inextricably clear. Courtney is being treated differently because of her privilege as a wealthy white woman, he wrote. Within 24 hours following Toby's death, the detective on the case prematurely concluded that this was not a crime of violence, but the information provided is deficient, and the lack of transparency strongly suggests that foul play is involved. She has no injuries to support her story of imminent danger. We have every reason to believe that his death was the result of unwarranted, unprovoked violence. We want to see that justice is served. That made me think for a little bit. Normally speaking, the requirements for self-defense is that you only use as much force as is necessary to stop the threat. This big dude, little woman, did she use excessive force to stop the threat? I don't know. I've heard law enforcement officers and previous law enforcement officers say, if somebody's coming at me, I'm going to shoot them until they stop moving. that is stopping the threat. However, for a normal person who's not an officer, we're encouraged to shoot them in the leg or stab them in the leg or something like that so that they can't get away. It'd be a lot harder to do that with a knife than it would a gun, honestly, to inflict an injury where they're not going to be able to follow you, chase you so that you can get away out of that situation. That's a thing. And in a knife scenario, if she was to stab him somewhere because she felt like he was a threat and she was trying to stab him to incapacitate him so that she could get away, if she missed, then she runs a strong likelihood of making him mad and dying. After prosecutors from the Miami State Attorney's Office met with his family, his cousin Karen told reporters, "We have no reason to believe that this is self-defense. The idea that this is somehow warranted is unthinkable." Their family's attorney says that Taylor's version of the events was inconsistent and not credible enough to back up her claims of self-defense. "We want her arrested," before adding that the family is just devastated. And to be fair, attorneys are really, really big on trying to get people to have consistent testimony, consistent stories, and they completely fail to understand that trauma makes very inconsistent stories, and that's normal. Like, that shows potentially that there was trauma. If her story was consistent every time in such a traumatic incident, it would actually suggest that she was lying, because to experience something traumatic screws with your brain. It screws with your memories. Like, on TV, somebody gets told something really traumatic and then they stop being able to hear. I always thought that was a joke until I experienced it. Like, everything else just kind of fades away. People will pass out. They will fall to the ground. There's different things that happens, but in the brain, it's sort of patchy. And then later, you're sort of trying to piece things together. You might piece things together in the wrong order at one point, or remember something that you didn't remember before, or forget something that you had remembered before, because your mind is trying to deal with what just happened. That's why EMDR therapy is so important and helpful for people who've experienced trauma. It actually works on getting the brain back online and firing both sides back up, because everything except for the fight or flight primitive stuff shuts down in a traumatic incident. So, in a courtroom, the accused has a right to confront the person that's doing the accusations. For that victim to be in a room where this assaulter is sitting there staring at them, and they're dealing with the assault anyway, and then they're being assaulted by the attorney, and they're trying to remember things, and their trauma stuff makes for very inconsistent, and the attorneys will try to use that against them and say, well, they're lying because it isn't consistent. But if they would bring in a trauma counselor who could testify to what trauma does to the brain when you're trying to recall a traumatic incident, like, that's totally normal. But most of the time, people don't do that in court cases. They don't. They should, but they don't have somebody come in and testify to that. The DA's office said in an official statement, when the investigation is completed, the state attorney's office will review the police department's evidentiary presentation and take appropriate legal action in accordance with the law. So, what they're saying is, when it's all said and done and we have all of the evidence, if there is an arrest that needs to be made of Courtney Tailor, then that will happen. And if not, then it won't. And it doesn't have anything to do with preferential treatment. That's just the way that it is. So, in this case, somebody believes there's enough evidence to suggest that she had committed this act in self-defense until the investigation is complete. Now, if it was flipped the other way around, and Courtney Tailor was the aggressor in the relationship, and he stabbed her to death, would it look differently? Very probably. Even if he was defending himself, because he's a man, she's a woman, he's big, she's not, he's black, she's white, she's the one that's considered more famous, I don't think he's anywhere near as famous. All of those things would play in, unfortunately, because we live in a broken world. But that's not the case here. And if he stabbed her to death because he was afraid of her, physically he could hold her down. Unless she had a gun pointed at him, there would be very little reason for him to use this kind of force to stop the threat of her. On the other hand, she's little and he's quite big in comparison to her. She has a lot of reason to use such force in a situation like that. So it doesn't look good, but it makes sense. Am I saying that I 100% believe that she's innocent and this is just a domestic incident that went all wrong? I have no way of knowing that. But here's the information. I'm presenting it to you because does it happen? There's a woman who murders a man in an intimate partner homicide scenario where she's the abuser, she's controlling, she's trying to leave, she doesn't want him to leave, and she murders him. Yes, that happens. It doesn't happen as frequently, near as frequently, and historically, usually when a woman killed a man in an intimate partner relationship, it was because she had experienced a lot of domestic violence first, and she felt like that was her only way out. But I do believe that that is changing. I'm just not sure that that's the case in this case. Tell me your thoughts. I would be really curious to know. I presented you with the information that I have access to at this time. If your intuition tells you that you're in danger, listen. If that's what she did and that's why she broke off their relationship, kudos to her for listening. If that was not the case in this situation, it's still important for you. If you believe that you are in danger in your relationship or with your ex or with somebody who wants to be with you and you've told no, get a hold of the domestic violence hotline. I will put that number on the screen. Your intuition is the best indicator that there is danger. If you believe that you're in danger, you are. I'm going to leave you with that for now. Until I see you again, please stay safe. Listen to your intuition.